This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Ashley Eckstein, Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z.
Joining us today for a cup of coffee to talk about the Season 1 finale, Kamino Lost, the 16th episode in Season 1 of The Bad Batch. First, returning guest, Tom Gross.
Hello, it's good to be here as always. I think I say that every single time. I think I've said that from episode 2 to today. So I'm glad I stayed consistent in coming onto the show. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. The last 16 weeks getting together and talking about the Bad Batch. And I've got, I think, a lot of things to say about this show and maybe this season as we go on to today. So thanks.
You are very welcome. That's become your signature sign-in. And you've been recently turning into a sheep when you say Bad Batch. So maybe that's part of your signature as well. It could be. Well, also joining us, returning guest. It's been far too long since we've had him on, but he is certainly a bright light in Star Wars fandom. We love him. LJ Sowder is back on Coffee with Kenobi. LJ, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Dan, thanks for bringing me back in. And I feel like I finally made the big leagues. It's the first time I got to record a show with Tom. So I feel like I finally arrived as a Star Wars fan.
Really?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
now.
You figure it's my, marriage, the birth of my daughter, recording with Tom Gross. In that order.
Wow.
That's right.
Let me sit back and ponder that.
Yes, that's good stuff. What about when we did the finale of the Clone Wars? When we had that massive roundtable, wasn't?
That was Ross and Colby, and was Tom there?
I thought he was. Maybe, yeah.
Well, then I take it all back.
Yeah.
Oh well. Wah, wah.
It just was that was such a bright light, it was hard to look away. Speaking of bright lights, there weren't a lot of bright spots in this episode, but there are a lot of fascinating things. We're going to break it down for you here on Coffee with Kenobi today. LJ, we're going to start with you. Give us a letter grade and overall reactions to the episode.
Well, I'm going to say it's probably going to be a B- for me. For anyone that's talked to me on CWK Live, they know that at the beginning of this series, I wasn't really on board, but it really started to turn the table, turn the corner in my estimation in the second half. But this was good, but it just felt for me like the ending kind of left them where they started. So I don't know what I was looking for in the finale, but I don't think this was exactly what I was looking for. Still a good episode, just not a great episode.
I really like how you said that. The fact that they pretty much at the end up exactly where they were at the beginning. Interesting. I think we're going to talk about that. Tom, what about you? Overall reactions and letter grade?
Well, I gave this one an A-, which I was after, episode or part 1, I gave an A+. I was a resounding A+. I thought it was magnificent. This was, I don't know. I hate to say it was a letdown because it wasn't a letdown. It didn't have the punch that I thought a part 2 of season finale would have. So, so specifically on this episode, I could hardly breathe the whole time. You know that. Me and underwater moments of film or television, I seriously have a hard time breathing when I have peril of characters drowning. It just was really bothersome to me. But I think I'll talk about this as we go through the episode. At least I hope it comes up. Is it didn't have the action that I would have liked to have seen from a series that is about soldiers. But I think it brought us in hindsight a more cerebral finish to this series that I don't know, that I thought there was a lot of, I think it's interesting that you say that, LJ, you feel like they ended where they started. And I felt like there was a lot of growth in this. And I thought a lot of the conversations that didn't involve action and shooting and things like that. I thought there was a lot of growth there. So I look forward to this conversation to really flesh that out, because in my head, I saw a lot of growth, but maybe not.
Okay. No, I think there's a lot of emotional growth. I think the notion of this being a show about soldiers, I think, has suddenly become, not suddenly, but it's very casually evolved from a show about soldiers to a show about families, which is when Star Wars is at its best. This episode, I'm going to give a C minus. If I'm only grading it on suspense and emotional intrigue and in clutching for fear of what's going to happen, then it's an A plus plus plus. But as a finale, I think one of the challenges to this episode is that the part one of the finale was so much more powerful. And this one was basically just one big let's get out of Dodge situation. Similar to what happened when they escaped the episode, I can't think of the name of it, after they got the chips removed. It was kind of a similar feeling with that one. And then the finale, the final moment did not work for me. In fact, it sort of seemed like that's not really the kung fu punch of oof that you want at the end of a season finale. But as I said, there's plenty to dissect. So let's dive right in, pun intended. We open with Rampart looking, LJ, like a sociopath. He's just staring down at this platform is being destroyed and devastated. There's tons of clones on there that are not quite out of their little incubator tubes, for lack of a better word. Of course, the Bad Batch is down there, Crosshair's down there, who Rampart has been working with. That opening sequence left me feeling almost sick to my stomach. I mean, great storytelling. But what kind of went through your mind at that part?
It kind of hit me the same way. He just had a blank expression while he's watching just an entire city get decimated, and people on his soldiers and the Bad Batch and the Kaminoans, they're all gone, and he's not even blinking an eye. And then you have that clone come up behind him, and he can barely even say the phrase that the city's has been blasted into the sea. And I always think the way that those soldiers are supposed to have no feeling, and those clones are just supposed to follow orders, and they're the ones that have emotions, whether this person that isn't genetically modified has no emotions whatsoever. I just thought it was an interesting balance between the two.
It was. And then you mentioned the clone, so we'll talk about that now. When there's a clone that stands up after, first of all, Hunter and Omega get separated. They keep jumping back and forth. The editing on this episode is peerless. The sound, the lighting is unbelievable. For animation, it's unbelievable. Yeah. Like Pixar level, I think. But when Hunter and Omega are separated, that's just one of probably 20 moments where you're like, what is going to happen? How are they going to get out of this? But LJ, you brought up that clone. That was one of my top choices in our top 5 tonight on Facebook Live. He says, all Kaminoan facilities have collapsed into the sea. And his shoulders hunch, his voice quivers, and his head goes down, his bucket goes down. LJ just talked about it beautifully. Tom, how did that sequence hit you?
Oh, it was, yeah, that was a great moment. And it was so, I'm with you, LJ, and really both of you have said it. Rampart is absolutely 100%. I loathe that guy. The way he stands there, it was so emotionless. It was, I don't know. I've seen some pretty horrible movies where people are doing some pretty horrible things, and you have the person who started it standing there and just watching it happen. Like, I don't know. It was chilling. And then his the way he dismissed the full emotion of that clone was so like in your face. And to me, that concludes the clone story. What else do the clones have to, I don't want to say live for, because that's kind of cliche, but like that clone standing there just saw the end of his story, because it doesn't matter what he does after that, they're done. And oh man,
I don't know. I mean, people are saying that, but to me, the clone story isn't done until every single clone is gone. And we know the clones are around for a while because of Rex and Wolf and Gregor in Rebels. But that I would say maybe you mean that chapter is done?
Well, yeah, I think that's what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't mean
Okay.
the clone. I mean, yeah, I mean that very generally. Like the
Okay.
whole purpose of a clone army just concluded when the destruction, he comes out, reports that it's completely done. I don't remember what his language was, but it was a really chilling moment because it was like closing a chapter. Yeah, and what I was about to say was that, so we get a season 2 of Bad Batch,
Mhm.
and so it's not over because the Bad Batch will continue,
Right.
but I guess I look at the regs as a chapter is kind of done.
No, I like
except for
that. I think that's neat.
extraordinary situations.
No, I very well said, sir, as always. Then after this moment, we get this really powerful sequence where Omega and Crosshair are teamed up. Crosshair is in quite a bind, and Omega has to save him. LJ, feel free to kind of break that sequence down for us.
Well, as always, Omega does the right thing. I believe our friend Colby Mead called her the compass of the Bad Batch, and that's great. And I'm going to steal that from him.
Yes,
but yeah, she doesn't even hesitate. Starts to try to save him, and when she can't move the beams off of him, she gets AZ to go underneath the water and use his basically to lift himself up and try to assist, and then eventually they're able to get a Crosshair out, while Hunter and Wrecker are trying to open the door from the other side. But yeah, again, just always makes the right decision. Doesn't hesitate. She's always going to save someone, no matter if he's tried to kill her half a dozen times throughout the course of the series. The right thing to do is to save him, and that's what she's going to do.
And she's basically the least anxious person ever. I mean, look at what she does.
Yeah, no hesitation. Just, okay, this is what we're going to do. Oh, I can't do it. Okay, well, this is the other way we're going. Yeah, I wish I could make decisions like that.
I know. I hear you. And I think, Tom, it's just really fantastic because, and I've said this before, but when Mason and I were watching this the first time, we looked at each other. We said, Tom is having a hard time on this episode because think about it. I mean, look at all the fears that Jennifer Connelly and Brad Rao bring into this episode. We got isolation because they keep getting separated from each other, clearly drowning, claustrophobia, and then later things that go bump in the night and total darkness. I mean, it's a master class in fear, and this is the time for you're on the Coffee with Kenobi psychology couch, Tom. This is your chance to vent on these feelings of drowning and how scary this was.
Oh, it was terrifying. So I haven't been as loyal to my tradition of Friday morning watching the Bad Batch just because school coming back and other things in life. But this one I wanted to make sure that I did on Friday morning. And so there I am sitting in the dark, kind of isolated myself because the family's sleeping. It's 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And I'm watching this. And the minute I saw that the city was starting to sink, I was like, oh no. I felt like Wrecker standing up high, looking down, going, oh boy. That's exactly how I felt. And like I looked at I've got that Fitbit watch, and I looked down at my heart rate, and boy, that sucker started going up. And I just was it's oh my God. Some of it is a little bit conscious now because I'm aware that this happens to me. But I started like realizing that I'm holding my breath, and like, how can they? And especially when it really got bad was when she was trapped with Crosshair, and AZ's like, you need to do this quicker. You're going to be, it's going to fill up. And there she was. She went down to the door and she saw the knife going through it, and she did whatever she did. Then she came up, and it was just enough for her face and her head to be above the water there. Oh my gosh. That is panic for me. That is true panic for me. But then, later on with the cracking glass, that just, it's true, and I I'm sure there are other people out there. I've never, I can swim. I'm perfectly good at swimming. I used to be a lifeguard, so I'm very, I'm beyond competent of being a good swimmer. I'm sure there are other people out there that can relate with this, because the underwater and that drowning sensation is a true fear for a lot of people. And I will say, as much as I laugh about it, it is significant for me. And this show was, I don't want to say it was challenging, like I ever felt like I wanted to turn it off, but I definitely caught myself holding my breath a number of times.
They know how to create suspense in a way that most storytellers would dream about. Absolutely dream about. Speaking of a dream, sometimes I wish, LJ, when I was watching Crosshair, that I was dreaming, because he frustrates me so much. I will say, and maybe I'll talk about this more as the show goes on, the first time I watched this episode, I couldn't stand Crosshair. He rapidly went into my top 5 least favorite characters in Star Wars. I'm just like, come on, dude, your pride is ridiculous. But then I watched it a second time, and my opinion of him shifted a little bit. Like, I started to understand that he is so conflicted. He is so confused. He's being pulled in so many different directions. And yes, he's very prideful. And he's definitely got a chip on his shoulder. But there's more to it than that. And I feel like one of the ways I was able to give him grace the second time I watched it is that he had no idea that the Empire set him up. And then when he does figure it out, he blames Hunter. And Hunter says, if you want to stay here and die, that's your call. So just based on that first interaction between Hunter and Crosshair, what did you think, LJ, of Crosshair?
I think that the art direction and animation are really giving us great clues and keys to just how conflicted Crosshair has been. Not only in the past couple episodes, he's always looking, and he's been holding his head. I don't know if it's because of a chip that's in there or not. I don't know if he's just holding his head because he's thinking, and he's super conflicted. His facial expressions, he's saying one thing, and I know he's staying true to his good soldiers follow orders, but you can tell he wants to be back with the team. But he also doesn't want to feel like that he's been again played by the Empire. He doesn't want to admit it, because admitting that admits to everything that he's believed in for this long has been incorrect. And pride sometimes won't let you do that. But you can appreciate that. You can dislike it, but you can also feel empathetic. And we've all been through that before, where we just let our pride get in the way of just admitting the truth.
It's true. And they are really having a hard time. Eventually, they get back to the old barracks. But before they do, Tom, there's this really beautiful moment. And LJ, I'd love to hear your take on it if you want to as well. But as they're running down these hallways and things are submerging, Omega looks over, I think it's to her right, and you see the cloning facility. You see all these clones waiting to be born or birth, or I'm not really sure what the correct terminology would be in this instance. But the look on her face and the emptiness we feel inside, it really brings up some really controversial issues and thoughts, but it was just absolutely horrific. This is not the first time they've taken something really traumatic, like the second episode, for example, what Crosshair does to those innocent civilians, basically. But this took it to like another place, because while I'm worried about the Bad Batch, I never thought there's still clones waiting to come into the world, and they didn't ask, for any of this stuff. And then we have to let them go. And all of the clones feel it, but there's no time for sorrow. It's really challenging, though. Really powerful scene.
There's so many moments like that where Omega, this is her home. This is where she grew up. And so when you think of all those times, if you were to lose your town, the town you grew up in, how many different places would you stop and try to get one more look? And I just, I guess, you know what? I guess I hadn't really thought about, and I didn't notice that there were still clones forming in those tubes. It didn't cross my mind, and I guess I didn't notice. But yeah, you want to talk about bringing up some issues there. And I think about this just takes me back, and this is part of, so in my original assessment of like the episode, when I mentioned that, this doesn't have a lot of the action that you would expect from a group of soldiers for a final episode of a season, but it becomes a little more cerebral. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. And this is what, and I don't know how many people feel this way, but this is what I wanted from the Bad Batch, and a story of this time period, was to see the horrific thing, not necessarily to see it, but to realize the horrific things that the Empire did to get to where they were when we see Darth Vader come on to the the Tantive, and and when he's throat holding people and stuff. There's a lot of baggage that goes into that, and now we're seeing it. And so not only the environmental destruction does the Empire do, the Empire is ruthless and sickening in the way they destroy a city where, let's get the necessities off, get the clones, make sure you get the scientists, and then everything else, including, and I don't know what to call them, unborn. Let's just go unborn. Leave the unborn and just trash it. Get rid of the evidence. And that is horrifying. But you're right. What brings the humanity to it was every single time we saw Omega stop and look and survey what she's seeing. Interesting. The life aspect is what is really making me pause right now that you brought up.
It's true, and I'm already telling you that my litter grade is going to go up a little bit, because there are some important everyone knows, I shouldn't say everyone, but people who listen to the show for all know how much I love Rebels. But I don't think Rebels ever got emotionally this profoundly deep as this particular scene that we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
if I could add something to that,
please.
For everyone that says I won't watch animation in Star Wars because it's for kids, that's some heavy stuff that went on there. And I really like the fact that they're showing everything through Omega's eyes, because the Bad Batch, they're jaded. They probably have some form of PTSD. They've seen death at a level that, no one could imagine. This is something new, and everything like this hits Omega really hard. And to see that, it was, I thought it was bad last episode when I saw the mess hall empty. That hit me at a whole different level.
Agreed. I very, very much agree. So they end up in their old barracks, and Wrecker is excited because, oh my gosh, Wrecker has like a nice innocence about him, but he also doesn't, which I like. All those missions together. He talks about, look, all my marks are on the board, or whatever he says, and then Crosshair says, all those missions together, and you gave it all away. Crosshair's vitriol is just, it's so abrasive. It's so abrasive. And then Omega says, I don't know, Omega gives some suggestions, which they follow because she's proven herself. And then Crosshair says she's calling the shots now. And Wrecker's like, we got a better idea. Not Wrecker, I'm sorry, Hunter has, do you have a better idea? And then it gets even better. They end up going through the secret tunnels. And then Wrecker and Crosshair, LJ, have a moment that I could have gone a number of different ways, and it ended up evolving the way I didn't expect.
And I thought that was interesting that the Crosshair he's lashing out and so defensive again because he's so conflicted, and he's just lashing out with his anger. But Omega taking the lead and him being so offended by that. But we've seen throughout the number of episodes that she makes great decisions, so they're going to listen to her. If it's a good idea, it's a good idea. And I thought the standoff between Wrecker and Crosshair, again, I feel it's Crosshair being super conflicted, and he just doesn't want to admit that he doesn't want to admit that he was wrong, and he just pushes harder and harder against it.
He lashes out, and Wrecker's like, something. What does Crosshair say? Something your tiny mind wants to say, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And then Wrecker says, with legitimate sadness, I mean, D. Bradley Baker is another level. But Record says, we would have taken you back.
Right.
Yeah. We would have taken you back.
Family. They say that, again, the show's evolved into a show about family, like most Star Wars shows become. And that's when they're at the best, like you said. And he would have, even after everything that's been through, he could have come back.
And the line, that's it. I'm glad you just said that, because I was saying that's the line that we haven't mentioned yet. Is Crosshair has been saying, "You left me, you left me, you left me," and finally Wrecker comes out and says, "All that time, and you never tried to come back."
That's right.
And then that's when he kind of breaks and says, "We would have taken you." And just that moment is my second favorite moment of this conversation, because
absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
The next part is what I'm happy to have him to work out this way. Tech.
Yep.
Defends Crosshair, but he doesn't. Break down that line and that sequence for us, Tom.
Oh, thank you so much. Because through it all, I'm just going to say it right now, through it all, Tech is still my number one guy. I love that character, and I love it for moments like this, because this was his moment. He says, he's always been severe and unyielding. It's his nature. We can't change that. He can't change that. And then Crosshair steps up. Why are you defending me? I can't do Brad. I'm not even going to try to. Not even going to try. But he says, why are you defending me? And I love this. He goes, I am not. Understanding you does not mean I agree with you. And at that moment, I hit pause. When I was watching it the second time with my daughter, I hit pause and I turn to her and I say, that is the line I use when I teach persuasion. When you're trying to persuade an audience that is 100% against you, you never try to change their mind. You try to get them to understand. And that's exactly what Tech says. Just because I understand you does not mean I agree with you, which I think is such an ultimately powerful line coming from someone so analytical. And if Crosshair had a friend in episodes 1 and 2, or before he left, Tech was it. Tech was the most understanding I felt of Crosshair early in all of this.
And the fact that he's the one who discusses this and who stands up to Crosshair, and the fact that Crosshair's like, wait, you're sticking up for me? Why are you doing that? But you can tell Crosshair's got like so much ice around his heart that is melting, and he wants it to melt, but he also sort of, I feel like there's some fear-based things going on there. But the fact that he is purely logic and he doesn't typically put a lot of emotion, he's not Spock, right? He has emotion. He just is more in control of his emotion, and he's very much pragmatic, but it doesn't mean he doesn't care. And I feel like that was a pretty powerful way to get emotion out of two characters in Clone Force 99 who aren't like the most pathos driven. I just really like that idea so much. Then we get this wonderful lead up to the underwater monster sequence, shocking it. The power goes out. Then the power goes on because we haven't talked about AZ yet. No. AZ, Colby said on Facebook Live, one of the MVPs of the episode, and I agree with that. Talk about AZ's role, not only in this part, LJ, but just in the episode in general.
He helped out and sacrificed, and was his goal, his main objective was to protect Omega and the Bad Batch, and he did that to the best of his even when his power was going out, even when he needed that. If he didn't have that portable USB charger that we all have, but he made do, went into low power mode. He was the MVP, or it just his floating up there to unlock the door when the restore the power when the monster was attacking and cracking the window and cracking the glass and giving Tom all sorts of heart palpitations. It was all in all, I thought he may have been the highlight of the episode for me.
Wow.
Can I say this about AZ? I was really annoyed by him, like way back when, at the very beginning of this series. And then when he disappeared, I was not disappointed that we weren't going to. When Omega leaves and doesn't take him, I was kind of thrilled and happy for that. But I have 100% flip-flopped ever since they've returned. I've really come to like AZ. I like how he supports her. He still tries to like keep a sense about him. Like he still tries to take care of her and say, well, we were told to go back to the Marauder and contact Rex, so we should probably do that. Which I think about now, if they had done that, this would have been very different. Let's just say from or from part one, but he keeps sensible, but then he always goes along, and he's very loyal. And you're right, he makes sacrifice in this episode. Anyway, I just wanted to put out there for the record that I had 100% flip flop on how I felt about AZ.
I love that, and I don't really know what else there's to say about the underwater monster situation, but I love that. I thought that was great. It was just cool. Like, it was very cool, very exciting. And Murphy's Law, whatever can go wrong will. And this took it to a completely different place. Very suspenseful, but when the monster floats away, you feel relieved, but you don't get much time to breathe. Then we get another conversation. They end up in Nalice's private lab. This is where Crosshair finds out, and we find out. I don't think they've said it before, and feel free to correct me, but Omega is technically older than the Bad Batch, but the reason she's not as tall as them is because she ages naturally, like Boba Fett does. But then they have this conversation, and all the while, AZ running low on battery, running low on juice, as you said, LJ, which is a great storytelling feature because if you do it beginning, there's got to be a payoff, right? So Crosshair says, Kamino, Rex, the Republic, their time is up. The Empire will be in control of the entire galaxy, and I'm going to be a part of it. So why does Crosshair want to be in control of the galaxy? Like, that's always the tagline for the Empire, and certainly the First Order. It's in the name. It's inherent in the name First Order. But what is appealing about being in control of the galaxy? Like, why does he want to be a part of that, even when he knows they're trying to kill him?
That's an excellent question. I tend to think that he is, again, much like Tech, he's very analytical, and he sees what the chaos and disorder that's been brought about by the Clone Wars, and I think he just wants everyone to obey, and the Empire is what really appeals to him in that respect. But I don't know if it does really. It almost seems like he feels like he was abandoned by the Bad Batch, and he wants to belong to something else. And if he's going to belong to something else, he's going to belong to the Empire. Because
maybe to spite them, like a little kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
I don't know,
because I wrote my notes in exclamation points. Crosshair is so stubborn, and I was so frustrated the first time I watched it. Tom, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I'm listening to you talk about how the Empire has tried to kill him, and like, why doesn't that change his mind? And I guess I go back to the Empire would believe in the survival of the fittest, right? And so in Crosshair's mind, I guess the way I see it is that his loyalty is unquestionable to the Empire because good soldiers follow orders. And so something along the line put him in the Empire's firings, into the line of fire, but he has survived like a good soldier. And so I don't think he sees the betrayal of the Empire or they left him on Kamino and then bombarded. I don't think he sees any of that as like they're against me. I think he sees it as I'm surviving. I'm a good soldier. I follow orders just like they are good soldiers and firing on this because this was the objective no matter who's here. I don't know. I could be way off on this, but what was I going to say? Because we were talking about, as being part of the Empire. I think the Empire gives Crosshair purpose. I don't think he gets what Clone Force 99 is now. Like, I don't think he understands. Like, they're not following orders. They're living this life of kind of in Crosshair's eyes that are just sort of meaningless. And they're going here to there with no purpose. And in fact, he says that a couple episodes ago, if not, maybe it was last episode. And so why does he stick with the Empire, and why does he stay with it? Because they give him purpose, because they believe in the philosophy of good soldiers follow orders, and without the chip or with the chip, Crosshair firmly believes that. And I'm with you. It's frustrating to me why he doesn't get it, especially from this point to the end. There's so much appeal to change his mind, but he makes a choice.
Yes, he does, which is powerfully confronted by Omega. But let's go ahead and take a quick break. And when we return, we'll look at the conversation between Omega and Crosshair in much more detail. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
With travel beginning to open up and Walt Disney World and Disneyland reaching full capacity, this is the time to book your Disney World vacation with MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. Their signature service and expert advice will help clients maximize their vacation, time, and dollar. I use Becky Menken and MEI's incredible services all the time, both for family and for travel for the show, because of their no cost, no obligation quote when you use the service. Plus, they proactively adjust a booking if the rate goes down. Literally, I will wake up one morning and I will get an email from MEI saying that the price went down, and I will get a refund sent to my credit card right away. I don't have to do anything. They help your family enjoy everything Galaxy's Edge and the Disney theme parks and the cruise lines have to offer, can help you plan every detail, and always share invaluable tips. That's for Walt Disney World, Disneyland, the Disney Cruise Lines, or other cruise lines. It doesn't have to be Disney related. They literally can help you plan a vacation anywhere on the planet. Be sure to go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel and sign up for a free no obligation quote to any of the Disney theme parks on the planet or any vacation that you have in mind. You'll have the best vacation possible and help out me and Coffee with Kenobi in the process.
We are back, and we're going to be looking the second half of this episode. And Omega, Crosshair's sitting by himself after all this stuff about, because Hunter says all you'll ever be to them is a number, which I really like that line. Mason wrote that down as one of his favorites in the top 5. But Omega goes up to him and she says, I wanted to believe it was the inhibitor chip that made you like this, but I was wrong. She doesn't add to that. She doesn't apologize. She doesn't try to persuade him. She walks away. You know, we all have our own path to take. Yet again, Omega is so grown up and so mature. That's a lot of adults have a hard time doing that. And there's someone that you care about. Because she does say to him at the end of the episode, and jump around a little bit, you know, you're my brother too. LJ, did that one kind of hit you in the gut too?
Yeah, because again, those are the hard conversations that we don't really like to have. I don't want to go to someone that I care about or my family member and tell them that I'm disappointed in them. It's like the last thing in the world I want to do. But for her to say that, it's not the inhibitor chip, you're just a jerk. Is a difficult thing to say. But again, no hesitation. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to say. So she does it. We talk about character development, and you just see the maturity of her present itself every episode. You get a little more from her, and yeah, it was an incredible scene. And to see again, you go back to Crosshair's face, and the conflict just keeps raging within him.
Yeah, which is why I think they continue to give him grace. Tom, go ahead.
I've been noting throughout this season all the different moments when Omega learns something from someone. She learned something from Hera. She learned something from, I forget the guy's name who loses the horn. And she loses something from a member of the Bad Batch and others. And I wrote down here that this is where Omega learns something from Crosshair. She learns, and I don't know, I wrote down there's a loss of hope, like a loss of, a loss of hope with him, because she has this innocent, I guess, youthful look that people can change and people will change. And here she makes the realization, the hope was this inhibitor chip was causing him to act this way. And she was wrong. And I love that moment. There's several things about that. I love how Crosshair separates himself. And when we talk about this theme of isolation, because it happens again later on in the episode, but he walks away from them and sits down. And even when she says, "What do you want?" Like, he turns and gives her like a really rude, "What do you need?" or "Go away." Is this the one where he says "go away," or is that later? I don't remember. But
no, that was earlier, I think.
Okay. He's rude to her when she tries to approach him. And so, it's another learning moment for Omega to discover that, some even people you have hope for don't always come through.
No, absolutely not.
But she's not done.
No, she's not. She's not, but neither is he. Basically, now we've got three main talking points that I want to address. I want to talk about AZ and sacrifice. I want to talk about quite a twist with Crosshair. And then I want to talk about the final sequence, not the epilogue, but the final sequence itself. So let's start with the original. They've got this thing. Speaking of claustrophobia, there's these underwater capsules. It's almost like when you're going to the bank teller. I'll take a checking deposit slip, and here's Hunter and Crosshair. And yeah, and so of course Crosshair and Hunter are together, and I like that because to me that's the balance. That's the yin and the yang of them being together. I thought they were going to fight or something like that, but there was none of that. They had to be together to balance out. They shoot to the top again. So AZ raises up as a hero and selflessly guides everybody because there's so much debris falling down that they don't really have an option. They're not going to make it. They're not going to float. I love the tech talks about buoyancy because that was the first thing I thought of because I am scuba certified. And that was one of the first things I thought of, the weight and all that stuff. And I love that they actually addressed the science of that. I thought that was really cool. So that the thing with him running out of power happens again and again, Tom. And it seems like every time there's a question about AZ, I have to throw it to LJ. So Tom, I'll have you answer this one. But talk about, basically they both sacrifice. AZ runs out of juice.
Yeah.
And then Omega says, "I'm going to go after him." So when that happened, at least to me, I thought, that's great. I hope you save AZ. But if something happens to you, then AZ sacrifices a waste because you're going to be dead too.
Yeah.
So that might be a little bit impetuous, but it could not be more noble, as we've talked about. But discuss the motif of sacrifice that both of these characters exhibit and how you felt watching it.
I guess I kind of, they'd set it up. You knew that this was going to happen in some way with AZ. But he gives that very heartfelt last moment, and he frees her pod or I almost said cell, but whatever it is, capsule is what they call them. And he's pushing her back up to safety when he loses his power, and he just sort of falls off. And I have to say, as a viewer of this show, and as my feelings for AZ had changed so drastically from the beginning of the season, I was kind of at peace with that. That here's the cost. Here's the cost of their escape. That when Omega says, "I'm going to save him," I have to admit there was a little bit of disappointment in me because I felt like it was kind of wasting his sacrifice. It was wasting AZ's moment. And she pops out of there, and of course that just drove me crazy. At that depth, I can't imagine holding my breath. There's no way she's going to get back in that capsule now. And so she dives in and goes down to save him. And I was relieved to know that that wasn't going to work. Not because I wanted to lose Omega, but because I wanted the reality of it. Like here's the sacrifice, and you finally for disobeying mean, how many
Mhm.
times does Omega disobey Hunter or others? And it works out. But again, as I mentioned earlier, if she and AZ would have gone back to the Marauder and contacted Rex, this is a different story.
True.
But she catches up with AZ, and I thought, okay, so if this is going to happen, because there's no way you're getting back to the surface, there's a little bit of justice to this. Not justice, but like this was her personal droid. And
Mhm.
she wasn't going to let him sacrifice himself or itself for her in this moment. And so I was kind of like, this is not how I thought this was going to go. But especially knowing that in the back of our mind, I know the story continues. So I was like, this is strange. And then can I continue, or do you want me to stop there?
We're
At how they're rescued.
Oh no, let's.
Okay,
I want to.
so I'll stop there. I really thought that Omega kind of stole his thunder and his sacrifice, but then I thought, okay, it's a double sacrifice for the sake of each other and for their friendship.
It's
I
love.
didn't know exactly where that was going to go, but then I kind of wrapped my brain around that.
Another motif that is continued throughout this season is we don't leave anybody behind.
True.
Omega is continually adding to her clan, to her body of people that she trusts, and AZ's one of them. So of course she would go after him. I couldn't imagine her not doing it, but I don't disagree. Like when it first happened, I'm like, come on. As I said earlier, I feel like what about his sacrifice? You should respect that, I mean, but we've seen that, like in The Last Jedi, Rose and Finn at the end of The Last Jedi as well. But it makes sense. It works. Mm-hmm. What didn't make sense, what shocked me incredibly, was Crosshair pulls out, while this is happening, Crosshair pulls out his massive sniper rifle and he aims it appears to aim at a Hunter. And at this point I said to Mason, oh, come on. What are you doing? But what does he do, LJ?
Well, he pays Omega back by saving her life by shooting his grappling hook or whatever into AZ and pulling them both up. To go to Tom's point, as soon as Omega went down there, I knew, okay, they're both getting rescued, and again, it kind of diminished his sacrifice. But yeah, Crosshair.
Were you surprised by
them.
Crosshair?
Yeah, I was surprised by Crosshair, and I thought it was, again, when I saw the sniper rifle pointed at what looked to be Hunter, I went, oh, really? He's going to take this opportunity to take out Hunter? But then as they bring up Omega and AZ and you pan behind Crosshair, you see the rest of the Bad Batch all have their guns out on Crosshair. So even if he were to make a move, it would be very short-lived. They were going to protect their own.
Well, and then Crosshair does something I'm still pretty stunned by. He throws his rifle to Wrecker.
Right. Yeah.
The one guy that physically, yes, I mean, Crosshair, if he wants to outgun you, he's going to. But he's not going to out-physical Wrecker, and he gives Wrecker his rifle. I think that's pretty symbolic.
Yeah, I think he was saying, okay, I saved her with my rifle. I'm not up to any more shenanigans or funny business. Let's just get out of this. Here's my rifle to show you I'm playing above the level right now.
Tom, was he looking for trust? Was he looking for trust from them? Was he surrendering? What was he doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was about to comment on that in terms of, first of all, I thought this whole sequence was absolutely magnificent. It was beautifully done visually, because there's a moment where I pause. First of all, when he pulls out his rifle and we think it's at Hunter, even though I had already seen it once, both Kaylee and I jumped we thought, oh no, oh no, what's gonna, because I don't know why I had forgotten that from Friday to Sunday afternoon, but I had. And so we both jumped when that happened, and there was that slight turn of the rifle, and then as LJ described what happened. But then, so what I thought was absolutely beautiful, and I paused it and I said, I really want to take a picture of this. And then I thought maybe Star Wars Card Trader has a card of this, and I still haven't looked, but it's it's a image of Crosshair's face, then Hunter, then Omega. And Hunter's looking over his shoulder, side eye at Crosshair. Omega is looking at Crosshair, and Crosshair has like the scowl on his face, and he's just looking down into the water. And I just think it's such a beautiful shot. I don't know what it was that I just paused that, and I said, that is magnificent. But what I thought was even cooler, and I think it kind of sets it up, is what you had described, where when they panned back after he shoots it and brings him up, they pan back and there's Echo and Tech, guns drawn. They pan over to Wrecker, gun drawn. And what it made me think of, and why I think he threw his weapon to him, it was the brotherhood. This is Crosshair's way of showing he understands the brotherhood. And so he saved a brother down below. He gives up his weapon as if to surrender to them as brothers and say, I'm done fighting you. Because later, just a little bit later, when we see him self-isolated on that platform, I come back to this moment and say, that's when he surrendered to them. He's not going to fight with them anymore. And I'm dying to know, and again, I don't mean to keep pushing to season 2. I'm dying to know what his role will be, if he even has a role in season 2.
Oh, he'll have a role. He's going to be like butter.
I'm sure he will, but I wonder if it's going to be what we expect. Based
I don't
on
know,
this
and I'm glad
sequence.
I'm glad that we don't. I just think he's so complex, and that's why the second time I watched this, it was hard for me to just flat out just hate him, because it's not fair. It's so much more complicated than that. I've never been in the military. I've never had seen the kind of things that Crosshair has. You know, let's not forget what I talked about, what he did in the second episode. Chip or no chip, I can't imagine that's not eating him up inside. You know, there's got to be something some of these things have got to be bothering him. But you know how it is, gentlemen, and people listening. Sometimes it's easier, and we've been victims of this, and hopefully, you know, you've seen it. Hopefully you haven't, but you probably have, where it's easier for people to tear others down or to get mad at people instead of look internally at what you need to fix. And Crosshair's got a long way to go, but apparently he's going to have a long time to do it because they offer him to come. He doesn't want to. So they leave him. You know, he says, we want different things, Crosshair. That doesn't mean we have to be enemies. That's what Hunter says. Omega looks at him and says, thank you for saving AZ. She doesn't go back on what she said before. Those boundaries are still there. But thank you for saving AZ. You're still their brother. You're my brother too. Beautiful. But the thing I think is the most beautiful, it's not too frequent. I mean, a little bit in Clone Wars, but we legitimately see sunshine on Kamino, and it's not raining. And I mean, like I said, that's happened a little bit in Clone Wars, but here it's just so much more poignant. It's not an art direction decision. It's a storytelling decision that everything is driven because of that engine. And to me, I think simply it's just this. After great darkness and destruction, there is always hope. You can always look to the light. You can always look to the surface. You can always look to good to prevail. And that is, if family is the theme of Star Wars, this is capital A, capital A, capital A, hope. And I just thought it was absolutely gorgeous and somewhat haunting, because you've still got, you know, Kamino's, the buildings, the platforms smoldering behind them. So I don't know what did you guys, how did you guys ingest the ending?
I thought it was a beautiful, hopeful ending. Again, you look at it compared to the end of Clone Wars season 7 and how like it seemed like all just snow and death and hopelessness, and then you compare it to this. I thought it was a very beautiful ending, but again, is you go like to Tom's point, season 2. What's next? Where is this hope and brightness? Where does it take us? So I'm interested to see where it goes.
Yes.
Yeah, I noted the daylight as well, and just how stark of a contrast it was. And I don't know. And I don't really have anything else to say about the sunlight itself, other than I would completely agree that it brings that feeling of hope. It's the hope that comes with the dawn of the next day. Even with the destruction in the background, there's still a forward. And I thought that Omega's line that you just mentioned, "You're my brother too." How mature and yet innocent, all wrapped up in the same just 4 words. But here was my impression is when the Marauder starts to lift off and they pull back from the platform, and you have Crosshair, who's self-isolated himself here. All I could think was, standing there on that platform is just a number. And it made me feel left a pit in my stomach for as much of an antagonist and irritant he has been through this whole thing. And we had so much hope for him. And even Omega says, clear to the end, I had hope for you. And I was wrong. She says, I was wrong. And here I felt so horrible for him, standing there all by himself, left behind. But left behind by his empire, and now made the choice to let his brothers go.
There's got to be a lot of self-loathing there, because all the kindness they've shown him, and they do come back for him. They could have left him in that place where they had their big showdown in the first part of the finale, and they didn't. Hunter stuns him.
Yeah.
And I just feel like there's got to be, because Mason says to me, how's he going to get out of that, Dad? And I said, I don't know. Maybe the Empire will come back and get him. But as we just said, he's a number. I don't know what's going to happen. LJ, did you have anything?
Did he? It's almost like he chose, I'm going to choose death over rejoining you guys. Because, again, the Empire is not coming back for one soldier. Doesn't look like there's anyone else on the horizon to come get him. So he literally chose death. Yeah. I'm sure he'll get off the platform. They'll find a way. Boba Fett got out of the Sarlacc. Crosshair will get off of there.
Right. Maybe they'll start a rock band.
But it's just to have that amount of self-loathing, you would literally rather just, you know what, I'll take my chances with death rather than join up with you guys, even for just a flight to the closest spaceport.
Perhaps he's even ashamed.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I could be.
I mean, I would think so. So then there's like a little epilogue, right? And it's Nala Se, who we knew from earlier. They were taking her because he says, a scientist I can use, a politician, no. So they take Nala Se to this weird, mysterious location that Mary Purdue talked about. It looked like a Ralph McQuarrie painting or something from the Thrawn Legends line of books.
Yep. Totally.
Right. So cool. So cool. Well done, Mary. But I was a little dissatisfied with this ending. I mean, it was cool. I think as a post-credits scene, although we don't really do that in Star Wars the animation, that made sense to me. But I feel like the emotional beats in the power of this episode. I mean, I didn't want any cameos from some other character from the famous Star Wars lore itself. I don't know what I wanted. Maybe just Crosshair being by himself. Maybe that would have been enough of a punch emotionally at the end, because you kind of go out with a whimper. Because there's not a lot of reason to rejoice. Yes, they're alive, thank goodness. But there's a lot of tough. I feel like they could have set up season 2 without the Nala Se thing. I don't know. Maybe that would have been better. I don't know.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think the Nala Se thing kind of took me out of the ending, because you had that emotional gut punch, and then you're like, oh, there's the person with the same outfit as Dr. Pershing from Mandalorian. I mean, that's great, but they could have just left that for season 2. If you want to have any sort of tease, again, have Crosshair sitting there, and maybe a ship starts to come down or something. If you want to tease something for the second season, go that route. But again, to go completely off board with a potential cloning situation, I don't know. Again, it took me out of it.
I agree. I had the same kind of feeling. It just made me. It did make me wonder more about season 2. Like, why is Nala Say so important at this moment? I don't know. It seemed very out of left field, but maybe, I mean, I'm sure that that's exactly how we're supposed to feel. I wouldn't be surprised at that whatsoever, but it felt kind of dirty because, how the Empire treats aliens or those unlike them. And so it didn't settle well with me. And maybe that's how they wanted us to feel at the end, and that seemed to be the best way. But I agree with you, Dan. I really thought the impact was panning out from that platform and really focusing in on the hollowness that Crosshair that you feel, and leaving Crosshair alone there, defenseless. He has no weapon that we know of. I mean, he gave it to his main weapon to Wrecker. So, but yeah, I thought that was really kind of jolting the way they finished that up. So all I can think is, wow, there's something going to be big with Nala Say, or Nala Say's impact on what she does with the Empire. Yeah, I will say this. Kaylee turned to me when it closed, and she goes, "Did you think that woman that came out with the Empire was the female tech?" She seemed like the opposite of like she was the tech, but the girl version of tech.
Really?
That's what she said to me. I said, "That's how you're going to leave the show?" She's like, "Well, that's all I could think of."
Interesting.
But that's part of what that scene did to me, is it really kind of ripped me out of the story and kind of place that. And I mean, obviously they want us to know that that story is going to continue. I just wondered if there was a different way to do that, like in a trailer or something.
I think so too. I mean, I love this first season. I think it's been great fun. There've been some storytelling beats that have been a little bit different than I would have done per se. But I am not an Emmy Award winning producer. I mean, I mean, Lucasfilm knows what they're yet. So I don't know what they're actually. Check's in the mail, LJ. Check is in the mail.
That's great.
We'll have lifeguard Tom deliver it.
On my way.
The whole thing. I don't know. I mean, I will take a wait and see approach, because when it comes down to it, I have loved this season. It's the longest animation we've seen on Disney Plus, as far as, from May the 4th till Friday the 13th of August. That's how long we got to enjoy this. I've loved having new Star Wars for that long. I mean, Mandalorian, as good as it is, and it is great, it's only 10 episodes. We got 16. We got another month and a half of Star Wars storytelling. And I loved it so much. I loved experiencing it with all of you. I loved talking about it with my son. It's been a great time. So before we wrap up the show, do either of you want to close out any thoughts, or maybe change your letter grade at all?
I think I can move this up to a B or a B plus after we talked about it a little more. Again, the ending kind of took me out, but leading up to that, again, we were saying before, you want a little more action in the finale, but the stuff that they went through, that was pretty deep, heavy stuff. So yeah, I'll go to a B plus.
I'm going to raise mine to a B as well, for the same reasons. Hearing us talk about it and realizing the psychological beats, I feel like it would be kind of unfair to not at least do that. I mean, it's not a C. If people say they want character stuff, this is full of character stuff. It's not resolved. It's not resolved. There are little things that are, but there are little things that aren't. So that's why I'm intrigued by you saying that they're kind of at the same place at the end that they were at the beginning. But I'm going to guess that you've changed your mind on that a little bit because of the
yes and no. I'm in the most literal sense. They're literally probably going to start next season by getting chased by the Empire / Crosshair. So again, they are going to be where they were in episode 1 and 2. But no, as characters, yes, there's far more development. But I really worry that we're going to go back to getting chased by the Empire in the first couple of episodes, and that I really don't want to go back to where we started from.
No, I don't think they will. I mean, I guess you could say cynically that they did that in Rebels, but they always had a way of making it fresh.
Mm-hmm. True. Yep.
Right. So hopefully we can do that as well. Tom, did you want to modify your grade or any last minute things you wanted to say?
Sure. I think I'm going to stay with my A minus. I was pretty happy with it. I thought our conversation helped to solidify and answer some questions or thoughts that I had about this. But I think there are plenty of seeds of direction for the Bad Batch that I think we're going to see a different sort of show. Not different. I don't mean a difference, but a different storyline. I agree.
Sure.
I mean, sure, we're going to open some episodes being chased by the Empire. I mean, it's the age of the Empire, so I think that's a definite given. But I think they will. My biggest criticism early on, if you recall, was what are they doing? Like, what's their purpose? And I feel like this whole story, and again, why I guess I'm not so critical of this last episode, although I would agree it felt like a bit of a down from part 1, but I feel like it took 16 weeks, it took 16 stories to finally give them their purpose, and I think that's what season 2 has in store for us. So yeah, this has been fun. I really have enjoyed it. I would say for the whole series, I'd give the whole series an A. You know, if Rebels is an A plus, and I put it on par with Clone Wars, which I put at an A.
I still would give the whole season a B plus, I think, because I enjoyed the heck of it, as I said before. But I feel like like Crosshair's frustration with the Bad Batch. Sometimes I find myself not frustrated, but thinking, what is the grand scheme? What is the grand plan? What is the purpose? We're on step A. What's step B? Right? So we'll see. We shall see.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
As we near the end of the show today, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a cup of coffee with me and for helping to spread the word about our Star Wars family we've got here at Coffee with Kenobi. Be sure to tune in Monday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/live or www.facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi and have a cup of coffee, tea, or any beverage of your choosing with me as we continue the conversation. To join us in the CWK Cafe, which is our Facebook group, and share your Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler-free place that is also drama-free, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/community and be part of the conversation, talk about this week's show, or just talk about some Star Wars. We have a lot of fun, and you'll make some new friends, as well as catch up with longtime friends along the way. I also want to thank all of the new and longtime members of the CWK Alliance and let you know how much I appreciate your help and encouragement. If you want to join the CWK Alliance, go to www.cwkalliance.com and sign up today. Not only will you help out Coffee with Kenobi, but you also get access to CWK Pour-Over, the exclusive weekly podcast not heard anywhere else. It's a great way to support and help out the show, and 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital to support the incredibly important work they are doing to help these brave children and their families. Plus, contributors at the CWK All-Star level can watch a video podcast of CWK Pour-Over hosted by me, Tom Gross, and Corey Clubb. Feel free to reach out anytime if you have any questions. In addition to being part of the community on Facebook, please don't forget to visit our website at www.coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, videos, and so much more. If you have a question for me or just want to share your thoughts on the air, feel free to email me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com and I'll share them on the show. You can also connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zaire, MRZEHR, or on Instagram at DanZareCWK. There are also a lot more ways to connect with me and Coffee with Kenobi on social media. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi. Check us out on Pinterest or subscribe to our Coffee with Kenobi YouTube channel. On our YouTube channel, you can find Facebook Live video, different interviews throughout the years, highlights of video coverage throughout the Coffee with Kenobi history, and the audio podcast itself. You can order my book, The Star Wars Book, which I co-wrote with Lucasfilm's Pablo Hidalgo and Cole Horton, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Books A Million, Walmart, or anywhere books are sold. You can also find my writing on Coffee with Kenobi's website, as well as StarWars.com, where I am an official blogger there, and on IGN, where I contribute occasionally to articles about Star Wars, as well as other popular culture topics. If you are considering starting a podcast or a blog, let me know how I can help you get started and make your creative vision a reality. Be sure to check out danzmedia.com and we can get the process started. I am also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. I want to inspire you to be inspired so you can take that first step into a larger world. Thanks as always to our Coffee with Kenobi sponsors, especially MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, our travel partner and your one-stop shop for all things Walt Disney World, Disneyland, the Disney Cruise Lines, or anywhere on the planet you want to go on your vacation. Please go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel to book your magical vacation and help support Coffee with Kenobi in the process. If you like the show, please tweet out that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your friends and family to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. And if the Force is especially with you, please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Google Podcasts. Every review makes a huge difference and helps to spread the word, and I can't thank you enough for your help, for your support, and your friendship. I love so much being a part of this wonderful Star Wars community, and I can't thank you enough for all that you do for me and Coffee with Kenobi.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, of course, talking with the both of you about Star Wars The Bad Batch. And really, all season we've been talking about it. It's been great. I'm actually going to have to come up with fresh topics for the next couple of weeks because there's no Star Wars shows to break down, but this is a wonderful problem to have. Speaking of wonderful, it was so wonderful to talk with the both of you. LJ, you know we love you, man. It's just so great to see you, your friendship, your support, and hearing your wisdom on Star Wars is just so great. Where can people continue the conversation with you online?
Well, I'm on Twitter. My Twitter ID is LJ Sowder, and I'm in Facebook. Primarily, I'm on Facebook for the CWK Cafe. So CWK Live. Sometimes I'm posting in there. Yeah, we can talk Star Wars. We can talk about Visions. I'm a big anime fan, so when Visions comes out, that I'm going to be super excited about that. But yeah, reach out to me there.
You can expect an invite from me to talk about Visions, by the way.
Awesome. Yeah, it's going to be great.
Awesome. I look forward to that. And Tom, it's been great having you as my co-pilot breaking down these episodes of The Bad Batch. Where can people reach out to you and give us an update on the new podcast and how that is going as well?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I just wanted to say, Dan, I really appreciate being able to break down this whole season with you. It has been so much fun. Just talking about the Bad Batch or, new Star Wars content. So that has been so much fun. So thanks for having me on for all of that. But yeah, you can catch me on social media, many different places, but the main one for me is on Twitter at Draftline, DRAFTLINE. That is where I hang out the most. You will find me on the CWK Alliance Facebook page there from time to time. I've been working on a couple of projects. Oh, I don't want to forget, of course, weekly on CWK Pour Over with you and Corey Club. We have so much fun talking about random stuff. It's the secret.
That's right.
I just subbed in for Corey there.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, talking about lifeguarding and other odd things in the pour over there. So check us out there. That is so much fun. But yeah, I've been having a couple of projects I've been working on. Of course, I've been blogging on my blog called Seeking Positivity in the Galaxy, where I break down just sort of random things that are on my mind that week and trying to show or at least find the positive in daily in daily life. And then I just started, as you mentioned, a podcast last week with our friend Dan Ream. That podcast is called Teachers in the Dungeon. It is where we break down the games that we play and analyze it from the point of view of the dungeon master, the player, the cool things we did, the mistakes we made along the way, all of that kind of stuff. So Teachers in the Dungeon, episode 2 came out this week. but you can catch us on social media on Twitter. Dungeon Teachers is our Twitter handle. We're also on Instagram as Teachers in the Dungeon there. So, yeah, been busy recently.
I love it. Well, yeah, continued success, man. The show's great, and I can't wait to see it grow and flourish.
Thank you so much.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.